welcome back to my channel, the Mistress of Horror here, author D.L. Tillery. Before we get started, how about you press that subscribe button, give this video a like, and ring that bell so you know when I'm uploading new videos. Now, today's video is a bit of a question. Is my horror too long? You're asking yourself this question, not just me, okay? Well, that's a loaded question. And it's also, I'm just going to let you know this right now, this is going to be opinion based. Opinions don't really mean much of anything, but I'm giving it to you anyway. Now, I like to think I know a little bit about horror, being the mistress of it. But there are some horror writers that are long-winded, so to speak, which is fine if that's what you like. In my personal opinion, which I did warn you that it's going to be opinion based, that's what else could it be, honestly? The longer your horror is, the lower chance of creeping out the reader is going to occur. This is an opinion, obviously, because everyone takes horror in the way they take it in. Also depends on what type of horror you're talking about. But this is my take on it. I believe, one, that the best type of horror is shorter. Not saying a short story per se, but a shorter, let's say, novel in general. But you can write it any kind of way you wish to. Then let's also talk about, let's give some examples, okay? So let's take horror writer Stephen King. We know Stephen King loves to push out those really, really thick novels. I will use it as an example. It is really, really long. 1,000 pages or so long. So you imagine how many words that is. I'll let you come up with the math in your head. Now, it is a really good horror story. I like it. I like the movie adaptation. I'm not a biggest fan of the novel per se because Stephen King can be long-winded at times, which is fine. It's his style. But that's a little too much for horror. I'm just saying. You can make a series. That would probably be a little better. But, I mean, granted, that is technically, I don't know. Would I say it's two? Would I say it's two novels in one? I mean, I guess we could. I mean, they split the movie up because it's just so long. But it's one novel. It's pretty big for horror. I'm not going to probably be creeped out by the time I finish that. And I like to get creeped out to some degree. I'm not going to say scared, even though I always tell you to stay scared. Not everyone is scared when they're reading a novel. First off, it's on paper. You really have to be a good writer to be able to give the reader the creepy feels that, not everyone can pull off. Doesn't make it not horror because you aren't completely scared or creeped out. It still could be horror because it's genre and that's where it falls into. But in my opinion, horror can be too long. You really need to think about this. And I think the nice sweet spot for a horror novel is probably somewhere around 30,000 words to, 45,000 words. Somewhere in that ballpark, if that's as far as I'm going to go with that. They fit very well for short stories and also novellas. Perfect for that. It's just my opinion on this. And it's the title alone. Is my horror novel too long? I guess you don't really need to make it like sci-fi length or epic fantasy length. Like, that's a bit So maybe your horror novel is too long. I don't know. I tend to keep mine around where I said. If I'm gonna do a full horror novel, it's probably not gonna be much larger than 35,000 words. And I don't average my numbers out before I finish my novel. I outline, but I don't know how long it's going to be. When the story's done, it's done. I'm not going to force it. I don't fluff my horror. That's another thing. We know word filling happens. We know it happens more in fantasy and epic fantasy and sci-fi. But we aren't looking for 100,000, 150,000, and so on words for horror because you're just, what are you telling? You're probably telling too much. Number two with this, if you're telling your horror too long, you're probably telling too much. You're probably telling too much. You need to hold something back. The stop line in this instance, like you may have to cut some stuff out if it goes too far, in my opinion. Again, opinion based here, but this is my two on this. I don't really let my novels go past the 35,000 word, and shorter, in my opinion, is even better. Novella size, 20,000 words and under, and even short story, which goes from, 1,000 to 3,000 words or whatever like that, in that ballpark. It really works really well. And back to the point of hold something back. In my opinion, again, I have to keep saying this, because it is. That's all it can be. It hold something back. You're giving too much if your book is reaching that. Like it depends also what kind of horror you're writing. There's so many different types, but again, the best type of horror, in my opinion, is the one that you don't know everything about the bad guy, creature, whatever the case of your horror is. But I'm just saying. And if you look at the track record of really good horror, did you learn every single thing about the monster? You didn't. Just saying. So, yeah, hold something back. Keep it a mystery a little bit. I mean, some types of horror is a little easier to set than done, of course. But you're getting too fluffy. You're too much fluff going on in that horror. Also, not just that your horror is too long, you might be putting too many big words, I would like to say. For horror, you gotta really watch that. It's nice to have a layered vocabulary, but horror, we're there to be scared. And for the monster and for the bad guy to do the thing bad that's happening. So when you start getting all philosophical on us, you're gonna possibly lose some people who want to be there for the gore or the murder or the horrific story or just the creepiness because you're being too philosophical or you're reaching for words that are just not needed. That's another thing to look out for. You're feeling, so you're really searching, which again, is your style, do what you want to do, but I'm just giving my opinion on this. Is your horror novel too long? Those three things can really make that happen, and you kind of want to stray a little away from that. Just saying. You don't have to agree with me. That's fine. Let me know in the comments if you like really, 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 really long horror stories in one book. I'm not talking about series when I'm saying this, by the way. Or do you like short horror? Or do you like normal novel length horror? I mean, we're talking about books here. We're not talking about movies because that's a whole nother conversation. But is your horror novel too long? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. It really depends on how you write it. That's going to come into a big factor. Can you keep that skill going for that long of a journey in that genre? You have to think about that. There are numbers for certain genres. Stephen King. But you don't have to follow these genre numbers. No one's saying you do. But again, I've never been creeped out by a horror story that explained everything, or a horror story that was super long, or a horror story that was trying to, go big wordy on you. And, some people may take that the wrong way because I'm very high intellect. So, all about the dictionary. But you really have to sometimes tone it down a bit depending on your own vocabulary. Tone it down a bit in the sense that don't overdo that. Try not to overdo that, I should say. We all have our things that we do that we should probably try to notice, but really mostly with any story that's fiction that could be kind of annoying. Just for myself. This is, again, I did warn you, this is opinion based. So take it as a grain of salt. Is your horror novel too long? If you're going to write a horror novel that's 100,000 words or more, then maybe it is, maybe it's not. I say yes. That's too much. Calm down. Maybe break it into a series, maybe make it 2 books, maybe make it 3 books. I don't know. That seems like a lot. That's definitely enough for 3 books. um, but yeah. So that's just my little 3 cents. Try to keep it shorter. Try to keep it around 35 to 45,000 words. Works decent for a horror novel. Also, try not to be long-winded. That'll help you with that length too. I'm not telling you not to write longer stories, but just understand what happens with horror when you keep going. You keep going and you keep filling in. It's not fantasy or sci-fi. But sci-fi can be horror too, don't get me wrong. That's a different type of conversation because of the subgenres that happen with horror and with sci-fi. But again, know your genres and know like when it's too much, something's too much. Just pay attention to those little things. They can help you a lot. But yeah. Of course, if you don't plan on trying to be creepy or really scare anyone with your horror, then whatever. At the end of the day, do what you want. But I'm just saying, as the Mistress of Horror, try to keep that horror to a certain level of length. Or not. Anyway, as I always like to say, leave me the comments below. Whether you agree or disagree, it doesn't matter. You can. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. If you read horror, because a lot of people don't necessarily do, but you're here, so you might. You might. I don't know. You might. Either way, let me know what you think in the comments. And I will see you in the next one. Stay scared.